Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Minecraft modding tutorial for version 1.19. In this tutorial we're going to be covering advanced items. So this is where this part of the series gets a little more exciting and we can start to do something more than just basic stuff. So yes, let's get started with advanced items, shall we? So let's just briefly explain what I am classifying as an advanced item. So by advanced item, I am meaning an item that has functionality other than just being an item, pretty much. So whether that be tooltips, whether that be doing something when you right click, doing something when you left click, etc, etc. There's tons of different functionality you can add, so we're going to go through some of that today. Obviously not all of it, because there's millions of things you could do, but we'll cover some of the base things you might want to do. So let's just get started. Let's come into our main package and we're going to create a new package and we're going to call this items. And inside of here we're going to want to create our item class. So I'm just going to call this advanced item. Okay, now this class will need to extend item. Now you need to make sure that's the correct item. Of course, that's net.minecraft.world.item, and then we need to add the constructor. Here we have the properties, which we can just shift F6 and change to properties. Then we can start doing whatever we want. So before we continue with that, let's go ahead and register this item and get it ready. So in our item init, we can come down below our armors and we can go, actually we won't do it down below our armors, we'll just do it up here. So we'll say public static final registry objects, and this will be of type advanced item, and I'm just going to call this advanced item is equal items.register advanced underscore item, and then you have your supplier of a new advanced item, and as usual that will take in your item properties, which we created a method for down here. Fantastic, so that is now our advanced item. Okay, inside this class we can do whatever we want. So any functionality you would like to add to your item, you can do it here. So I'm briefly going to go through some of the methods you might want to override and just sort of what they do. So the first and probably most common method you're going to want to override is the use method. Now this method is called when you right click the item. That's pretty much it. So if when you right click the item in mid-air, this is sort of the method that will be called. And yeah, you can do any right click functionality here. The other method which you might want to use a lot is use on. So this method is called when you right click on a block with this item. Another method you might want to use is on left click entity. So this is when you left click or punch an entity with this item. And another one is, I believe it is called entity. No, it's not called. There is an interact method. Interact living entity, there you go. So this happens when you right click a living entity. And there are a few more, but we're just going to be using use in this episode. And let's rename some of these things. So this, for example, is the level. This is the player. And this is the hand. Okay, and we're going to keep this return there, and we're going to do our functionality up here. So yeah, I mean, you can do whatever you want. All I'm going to do in this tutorial is make it send a message in the chat to the player. So all you need to do for that is player.send system message, and this just takes in a component. So a component is basically just a piece of text, pretty much. So to make a component, you do component dot, and then you can create your different components. You can create an empty component, a keybind component, a literal component, which is just a string, MBT, score selector, translatable. So if you want your component to be translatable, then you can put a translation key in here. For example, I could put tutorial mod dot mod ID plus dot dot advanced underscore item dot right underscore click. And then in my lang file, I could have something like tutorial mod dot advanced underscore item dot right underscore click, and I could say that is equal to beans, and then that can be translatable into any language. That is what you should do. Another thing you can do is also just a literal. So a literal is just a normal text component, really. Nothing too special about it. You can just put in whatever you want in this string, and that won't be translatable. For the simplicity sake here, I am going to use the literal, and I'm just going to say beans, and there you go. That will be the beans. Fantastic. So now when you right click, that will send a message to the player saying beans. One thing you obviously might want to do here, well, I say obviously, it's not obvious, but you might want to check the hand. So you might want to say only if the hand is equal interaction hand.main hand, then maybe you can do that. And you could also do something like check if it's client side. So you might want to say if it's not client side and it's in the main hand, then we want to send a message like that. Okay. The next thing I'm going to be showing you how to do in this tutorial is tooltips, and I know that that will be very, very common among most people's items. So how do we add a tooltip? Now initially you might think there is just a method named tooltip. However, if you search for tooltip, you'll see there are two methods with tooltip in the name, but they're not helpful. They're not the ones we want. What we actually want is a method called append hover text. I know it's a slightly weird name, and let's just rename some parameters first. So this first one here is the item stack, or I'm just going to name it stack. Then we have the level, which I'm just going to name level. Then we have a list of component. So these are the different components. I'm just going to call this components. And then we have a tooltip flag, which is basically whether it's advanced or not. I'm just going to name that flag. Okay, so here we have the super, which will just add everything that the super class wants to add. We are going to leave that there, and from there we basically can do whatever we want. So we can do components.add, and then you can add your component. So component.translatable maybe, tutorial mod.mod ID plus let's say advanced underscore item dot tooltip, and you can put that in your lang, and that will work. Now what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to do something a little more advanced, and I want to have a shift tooltip. So when you press shift, it will show a different tooltip. So it will say press shift for more information. When you press shift, it shows a different tooltip. And that is actually really easy to do. However, the issue is we don't have a player here. As you can see, there's no access to a player. So we can't really check if the shift key is being pressed. And that is slightly an issue here. So one thing to note about this append hover text method is this is client only. This method will only run on the client side. And the issue is this item class is common. So this item class is both client and server. And that means we can't have any client only code in here because this class is loaded on the server as well. And that sort of causes a bit of an issue because the only way that we can access the player is using the Minecraft class. And this class here is client only. If you load this on the server, it will crash because it doesn't exist on the server side. So we have a slight little issue there. Luckily, there is a fix for this, and that is to make our own class. So let's come into our main package. Let's create a new class. Now I'm going to call this class client access. And this is basically going to be for methods that we want to access only on the client side. And these could be called for anywhere. So this would just be basically a utility class, if you will. And what I'm going to put in here is I'm going to say public static void. Now I'm going to call this check, or I'll do advanced item tooltip. That's what I'll call it. Okay, and I'm going to pass in here a list of components. Not that type of component, that type of component. And I'll call this components. Now, we can actually say if Minecraft.getInstance, which as I was saying is client only, .player .is shift key down, then we can say components .add, we can say component .literal, and then we can say press shift for more information. Okay, and what you can do to this is we can actually go ahead and color this if we want as well, and we can do that using the Minecraft color code. So these are the Minecraft color codes here, and we need to use the MOTD codes for this, not the chat codes. So I'm going to use purple here. So let's come back into here, and let's say before the shift we'll put this one. Just make sure we get that right, like that. And then after the shift, if we come back onto our color code website, we can simply say grab the white, close this site now because I don't need that anymore, and we can plonk that in there, get rid of this jank that's added, and boom. Now we have our two colors for it. Now if shift is not pressed, we can say else components.add component.literal, and we can instead say beans. And we could do something like, if we pass in the level as well, so level beans plus level dot Wait, has that passed? That's not the right level. Okay, we want to make sure we import the correct level here. That's the level we want. We can just say level.isRaining, for example. And that will just only say beans level is raining if the shift key is being pressed. Now, let's come back into our class, and you may think that we can just call client access. You may think we can just do client access dot advanced tooltip level components. However, we can't do that because we will still have the same issue. That class is still going to be loaded, or at least theoretically might still be loaded. So what we can do, just to make sure that this is perfectly safe, we can do dist executor dot unsafe run when on dist dot client, and then we can do a, I believe, supplier. Let me just check, what does it ask for? A supplier of a runnable. Okay, that's what I thought. So we can do a supplier of a runnable of client access dot advanced item tooltip level components. And that absolutely ensures that nothing here is going to be loaded on the correct side. Nothing is going to be loaded on the incorrect side. We don't want anything to be loading on the server. And yeah, this will work perfectly fine. Now, you could just risk it and leave the client access this. It might work. However, personally, I don't trust it, and in my eyes, there's no reason not to make sure. The client and server interact with really weird ways sometimes. You just want to make sure everything does work fine, and that's just how I like to do this. Now, one thing I should mention here, in this use method, you can actually return stuff other than the super if you want something to happen. So for example, instead of returning the super here, we could do interaction result holder dot, and then you have some options here. So you have whether it succeeded, whether it failed, whether it should pass, whether it should succeed on a certain side, etc, etc. And this just allows the super to have some functionality when you go through and do all the super stuff. That should be pretty much it. Yeah, that should be pretty much it. Our items should now work. Let's just go ahead really quickly, do the boring stuff, that being the lang. So advanced underscore item, advanced item, and also obviously the item model. Let's grab that as well. Advanced underscore item, advanced underscore item, and then finally making sure you have the texture, which I actually named slightly different. So I'll just call that advanced item. Now obviously you wouldn't name your item advanced item. That is something I should have mentioned earlier in the tutorial. You would name it, you know, whatever your item is, not advanced item. That is a really dumb name. That is the same with the class name. Don't call this advanced item. I beg you, don't do that. People did that in my last tutorial series. Don't do it. It's really bad name for a class. Call it what it is. You know, if it's a golden apple, call it a golden apple item. Simple as that. You know, don't call it an advanced item. Unless your item is literally just called advanced, which, dumb name by the way. But yeah, I mean, you get my point. You get my drift. But that is it for this tutorial. Let's just go ahead and test it in the game. and hope that everything will work. Okay, so that didn't work, and I was trying to figure out why for a little bit. It turns out the methods I was using to check if the player is pressing shift do not work in GUIs, which is stupid. But essentially, I have changed it around a little bit. So we are now using screen.hasShiftDown. Much simpler method as well. I actually wasn't aware this existed. I was just looking through the Minecraft code just to see why it wasn't working. And it turns out this is sort of what you're meant to use for this kind of thing. Another thing I did just change, because I thought it was a little bit ugly, is instead of having these literals straight in this string, I am instead just making them constants and passing them in like this. I think that's just a little bit cleaner and yeah, much easier to read. So if we go into the game, we can see if I right click my item, it says beans, and it only says it once. Every time I click it, it says it once. Fantastic. If I go in my inventory, we have our press shift for more information. I press shift and it says false. And if I do happen to do weather rain and then press shift, it says true because it's now raining. And I'm just going to do weather clear because rain is bad, and as you will see, it now changed to false because it's no longer raining. And that's it. So yeah, I know the texture is obviously awful, but yeah, I hope you guys did find this tutorial useful. If you did, please do be sure to smash your face into that like button and subscribe. If you really enjoyed or found it useful, please do be sure to share it around. And yeah, I will see you guys in the advanced block tutorial. Goodbye.
Oh, you can't come back here.
Chicken sandwich.